Welcome back to Friends of the Night. There's one thing that I know is that we're not alone in this universe. To get to the bottom of what is going on when it comes to extraterrestrials and UFOs, I believe you have to go all the way back to 1947 in Roswell. And it's not because it's the first time that maybe UFOs came to our planet or the first time people saw a UFO. It's because it's the first time that our government had to work very hard to convince us it didn't happen. So back in 1947 was obviously a different time. For one, the National Security Act was not yet established. And the National Security Act was made to help create a stronger presence for the military while interacting with foreign threats and other countries, and that was decided to be made right after the Roswell UFO crash. So when we think about our country and America as a whole, that was one thing that was significant that happened in the year of 1947 was the National Security Act, and it was passed directly after the Roswell UFO crash. Now, in 1947, a rancher found a piece of debris on his property, and he brought it to the local sheriff, and the local sheriff is the one that contacted the Roswell Army Airfield that created all the commotion of the government coming to this ranch and taking away some type of debris. Now, the crashed debris was taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It's public knowledge. When the Roswell news broadcast first appeared, they said live on the air that the debris was taken to Wright Field, which is Wright-Patterson.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
The plane that the debris was being loaded onto were surrounded by local workers, and these workers knew that something important was being loaded onto the plane. And these guys came out later in their lives, and they said, you know, what we know is that when we were all working, getting the debris onto the plane, we all knew that this was like a top secret thing. Like, we weren't really allowed to ask any questions. We just knew that something important was being loaded onto the plane. You got to think, you're working at an airport, and now there's this crashed debris brought in, and you know, like, oh, this thing just made it in the newspapers that they recovered a crashed UFO, and now we know that this is about to be sent to Wright-Patterson, Wright Field, Ohio, and like, you know, you got to be all quiet about it. So they were the ones that came out later on in life and said, like, we saw it being loaded onto the planes, and we weren't allowed to ask any questions. We all just knew, all the workers knew something serious was being loaded onto these planes.
My involvement was to help load the crates of the debris onto the aircraft.
Now, would the government go through all this commotion if it was just a weather balloon? Like, if it really was just a crashed weather balloon that they said it was, would all this secret under, like, you got to remember, this was behind the scenes when they're loading the planes, and for the people that worked at the airport, you know, this is behind the scenes. You don't know about this. This might be the first time you even heard about this, right? Is that the workers said, hey, like, we knew something strange was being loaded onto these planes, and you know, we were all we all knew what it was, but we weren't really allowed to ask any questions or say anything else about it.
What was it that was actually loaded on board that you saw?
Well, we had it's just packages and wrapping paper, and one of them was triangle shaped, about 2.5 feet across.
So that's for the people that were standing around watching this be brought to Wright Field. Now, the debris makes it to Wright Field, and we know, okay, the crashed debris left Roswell and was brought to Wright Field, Ohio. Years later, when we talk about present time, our Space Force is represented in Wright-Patterson, Ohio. So even to modern time, when it comes to space and extraterrestrials and everything, there's a lot that happens at Wright-Patterson. I mean, our own Space Force was being represented in branches at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So now going back to the famous photo that we've all seen when we think of Roswell and the UFO crash, this is the photo that we think of. That right there is Jesse Marcel. Now, his story is very interesting because later in life, he told the world that what was found was not from this earth. Okay, he had direct hands on what this crash debris was, and he said it wasn't from this earth. He also said that the smirk on his face in that photo is because they switched the crash debris out. Now you have to remember, he was a lieutenant, okay? Like, he served the country, this guy paid his dues, and now, before he passes away, he tells the world, listen guys, I'm going to tell you a few things about the UFO crash. One, it wasn't from this world. Two, whatever it was made out of, you couldn't put a dent in it, right? We were smashing it with hammers, and you could not even put a dent in it.
There's something unusual here. He said, I tried to make a dent in this metal. He says, you can't bend it. You can't make a mark on it. He says, I took a sledgehammer and whammed it. I put it on the ground and whammed it. And the sledgehammer bounced off of it.
And three, what you guys saw in the photo was switched out. I was holding basically tin foil and sticks, and what was really found was already being scrubbed in Corona, New Mexico, which is where the crash site was. It was in Corona, New Mexico. Just Roswell was the closest city, so that's where all the press went for it. But this guy, Jesse Marcel, told the world before he passed away that what was found was not from this earth. Now, what also makes the Marcel family very interesting is that his son also came out and said, in the middle of the night, my dad came home and dropped off a piece of the debris to show the family. So Jesse Marcel not only said this wasn't from this earth before he passed away, he also brought a piece of it home and showed the family, hey, look, this is a piece of a UFO.
He brought the material in and spread it on the kitchen floor, and in an effort to try to piece it together like a jigsaw puzzle.
And Jesse Marcel Jr. said, Dad woke us up in the middle of the night, put all the debris on the kitchen floor, and was just showing us like what they found, what the government found. And they said there was little geometric shapes all over the pieces of debris.
Now, the most unusual part of this whole thing was what was on the I-beam, on the inner surface of the I-beam. Because as you look at it head on, there appeared to be a type of writing on the mainframe itself. This writing was definitely a purplish violet hue. It did have an embossed appearance because you could, if I recall, you could rub your finger on it and you could tell it had texture. I don't recall any scene.
Now, I always thought that, possibly, let's talk about the cover-up. Let's say this family is not lying and they are honest, and Jesse Marcel and the Marcels are like, this is the family story. Dad woke us up in the middle of the night, showed us a piece of UFO. I saw all these geometric shapes on the metal, on this type of metal. At the time, I thought it could be Egyptian. That's what he said. At the time, I thought it could be Egyptian. Let's just say it is influenced by Egyptian culture, and that's why it's on there. Well, when you go all the way over to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and their branch, I believe it's Delta 18, their logo is a pharaoh. Now, what we want to make of that is we can make whatever we want of that. Obviously, there's were influenced by Ancient Aliens and lots of different TV shows that had been pushing that idea. But I always find it very interesting that the Marcells said there was some type of Egyptian language on this metal. He wasn't sure if that's what it was. He actually thought it wasn't that, but it looked like influenced from it. And now you see like a branch at Wright-Patterson, the Space Force, with the Pharaoh. So I always found that very interesting. And I also always questioned if the Marcells kept a piece of the crash debris. And it's, Jesse Marcel Jr. was asked, do you think your father kept a piece of the debris? And he was like, no way. My father was, he served this country. Like he wasn't going to steal anything. He wasn't going to do anything like that. Like he served this country. And part of me thinks like the way he said it is true. But you also have to remember that if he did believe that strongly of serving his country, he also came out at the end and said like that thing was not from this earth, and he believes that it was extraterrestrial. So you have to question if the Marcells have a piece somewhere, and if they don't have it, then what I found very interesting is that one of those workers that worked at the Air Force Base in 1947 said he saw another worker put a piece of the crash debris in his pocket. He said he saw somebody put it in his pocket, and he thinks it still could be out there.
There's a little piece of material, so big square. And you could crumple it up, let it out, and it would come out flat. And you could not crease it. One of the guys that was in on the crating and so forth picked up a piece, slipped it in his pocket. And where he is now, I don't know.
So there is a chance that somebody in this country, there's a family in this country that has a piece of the Roswell UFO. There's an absolute chance, because one, who knows if the Marcells ever had any connection with it. If the father brought a piece home, who says that he didn't bury a piece in his backyard? And again, like that's obviously saying something that's probably not true. But I'm just saying that there were so many people involved in this incident that it's entirely possible that there is a piece of this debris somewhere out there, and a family is keeping some type of secret. Who knows? There's probably a family out there that is passing down a piece of the Roswell crash UFO and maybe just not saying anything. And I think that would be really cool if one day that came out, where it was like, look, my family has this piece of the UFO. It's been passed down for a long time, and we want a scientist to analyze it. And I think that could tell us a lot about what's going on. That's just one family to come out and say what happened on their side. But the whole Roswell story as a whole all came from family members. Like everything we know about Roswell wasn't just written like as a story. It came out from local people in Roswell saying what they know. And I think a lot of people just forget that. It's like if you're into true crime or anything like that, the Roswell cover-up came from the family members, and everybody is telling a familiar story. Everything is connected. Everything sounds like it could be from the same story. For example, now we go to George Wilcox, which was the sheriff of Roswell, the one that got the call about the crash debris and then called the Roswell Army Airfield to get like the higher level government to come sweep this and see what's going on. And his wife said to their granddaughter, right? So just so we got it straight, George Wilcox's wife, okay, the sheriff in town's wife, said to their granddaughter when the granddaughter was over, they're watching television or listening to the radio or whatever, and the radio or the TV talks about space, and they're like, space and blah blah blah. And the wife of George Wilcox, the grandmother, says, "Do you believe there could be anything else out there?" Now, it's like grandma is asking you, like, do you believe in aliens, basically? And the granddaughter says, well, yeah, sure, grandma. Like, there could be something else out there. And then she tells the granddaughter the family story.
He said, well, I have something that I would really like to tell you, but I don't want you to ever discuss this or tell anyone.
The family secret. Okay? So she says to the granddaughter, there was a night in 1947 that we recovered an alien spaceship, alien spacecraft, and there were bodies collected. And your grandfather was the sheriff in town and was basically called with this news and then told if our family ever tells anybody, they will get rid of us.
In the 40s, there was a spacecraft, a flying saucer is what Big Mom called it, crashed outside of Roswell. That's interesting. I said, how do you know about it, Big Mom? And she said, your grandfather, George, was as a sheriff at the time. And I said, what? I had any idea. I said, what more about it? And she was very hesitant to talk about it, but you knew that within her there was something that she really needed to tell me. She sat there for quite a while, and then she looked at me and she said, I'm just going to tell you. And she said, but don't tell anybody. And I said, who would I tell anyway? I don't know anybody to tell. And she said, the reason that I'm telling you this is because when the incident happened, the military police came to the courthouse, to the jailhouse, and told George and I that if we ever told anything about this incident, talked about it in any way, that not only we would be killed, but the family, that they would get the rest of the family.
You guys got to watch this video, because if you really want to know what's going on with extraterrestrials, you need to watch these family videos of these old family members talking about like what happened. And basically the grandmother tells the granddaughter that we were told they would basically wipe our whole family away off the face of the earth if we ever said anything about this. And when the granddaughter tells the story of this on camera, she's not an actor. She's nothing. She's just a person like talking on camera, and she's very emotional and crying, and it's truly terrifying.
My grandmother stated that my grandfather went out there to the site. When he got out there, there was a big burned area when they first approached the area, and then they saw debris. He saw debris. I don't know if he was alone. She was not with him. He went by himself. She said that it was kind of like in the evening, and then when he came back, I asked her, I said, out of jokingness, did he see any little space beings? And she said, yes, there was 4 of them. And I asked her, I said, what did they have on, Big Mom? And she said that they were like gray, and Granddaddy said their heads were large, and the little suit that they had on was just, you couldn't, it was just like silk or something, like that kind of material. But they were gray. And I asked her what happened after that, and she said he came back into town, and I guess they had discussed this incident, and they had thought it was fine to put it over the news, to talk about it, and then apparently something happened, and it was not okay. And that's when he started, Big Mom said he got phone calls from all over the world. England, people were calling him, talking to him, asking him about the situation. And he had been visited. And when they knew that he had gone out there and seen the site and seen this situation that they had talked about, Big Mom said that they were on him like you wouldn't believe. And they came into the jailhouse and told him, you don't say anything, George.
So when you think of like Roswell, you have to think of like these are people that lived in the area that told the world their story, and that's what makes it so strange, and so where if it did happen, like the government had to shut this down completely. And that's like so many things happened in America because of this. Like if this was true, this formed the National Security Act. It happened the same like a month after the Roswell crash, right? And there's just so many families that like have stories that's like you have to tell so many different people at the time, like your family will be wiped out if you mention this. And so everybody was scared to talk, and I truly believe that not everybody had enough information of what was going on at the time to risk their family. They just knew like, hey, like I'm involved in some stuff here, and like I don't want to be, and I don't want anything to happen to my family, so forget about it. Like I don't even know what it was. You know what I mean? Like, I just know something happened. And so I think across the board, when you listen to all the family members of Roswell talk about what happened, it's all like this is like just a weird thing that happened at the time, and like I think it was extraterrestrial, but like I can't say 100%. Like, even when Jesse Marcel talks about the crash debris, he doesn't say like this is 100% UFO. He's like, it was really weird. Like, I don't know. Like, it had like, it looked like Egyptian writing all over it. Like, I don't think it was Egyptian, but it just every little thing seemed strange, right? And I don't think that anybody in Roswell had enough information that they were certain enough that it was extraterrestrial to risk their family. So that's why everybody took a back seat on it, and that's why everyone said, fine. Like, if I get approached by somebody in the government saying, hey, you know, you're not going to talk about this, or we're going to basically wipe you out, you're going to say, okay, like, I love my family. I want to believe in God. I want to believe in religion. I don't want to just think about the alien that possibly landed and crashed, you know, in town. So that's just one of the things. Another thing that's very strange about the Roswell incident is that a place now that everyone goes when they go to Roswell is the Roswell Museum. And the Roswell Museum, one of the owners was directly involved in the Roswell incident. And basically, he worked at a funeral home in town as a kid. He's a high school student, and he's working at the local funeral home. And he got a call one day from the government asking for these 3.5 to 4 foot caskets. And from what we know, those are the dimensions of the extraterrestrials that were recovered at Roswell.
15 or somewhere right after lunch, around 1:15 or 1:30, from the mortuary officer wanting to know what was the smallest size hermetically sealed casket that we had in stock or that we could get. And I think I informed you that we usually kept a 4 foot, but I could possibly get a 3/6. And I said, I mean, what do you have in mind? He said, well, this would be for future services later on, in case he said we need to know this in case something comes up in the future. And then about another hour, maybe 45 minutes later, I get a call from the same officer. And he said, I would like to know what your preparations for bodies that might have been laying out in the elements are.
And he said that I got a call, and the government, it was like right around those days that the crash happened, and I got a call at the funeral home, and they were asking me, you know, how to take care of the body, how to not let it decompose fast, like how to slow down the process, do we have any caskets? During that time, while he was working at the funeral home, and the government was looking for these 3.5 to 4 foot tall caskets. So, with all that being said, if we're interested in UFOs and we're thinking about what else could be out there in this universe, obviously it's crazy to think we are the only ones in this universe. And you know, we've had our UFO hearing, and we've had little things happen in our lifetime when it comes to extraterrestrials. But if we really want to learn the truth and really try to figure it out ourselves, if the government isn't going to tell us what's going on, it's important that we dig into the past, because that's when this whole thing happened, was in the past. So we have to go back to those stories and reflect on them and see where things start to come together. And I personally think that extraterrestrial history is the most interesting part of American history out there. I know, and that sounds crazy, like it really, really does. But the reason why I think it's so interesting, that if it is true, then it's 100% the most interesting, right? But right now, in modern society, like, you have to dig for it. Like, even watching like TV, like, you know, watching just ancient aliens and stuff, that's like TV. You know what I mean? Like you actually have to kind of like do your own research into it. Like, you know, for example, I'm dropping these names, you know, George Wilcox. Okay, so then you go on Google and you type in George Wilcox and you start to find stuff and everything about him, and then they'll start talking about the UFO stuff, and you kind of ingrain that in your head, and then you learn another story and you're like, oh wow, George Wilcox said something about that, and everything starts to intertwine, and that's why I believe that something did happen. I think that like all the people that came out in Roswell that talked about this, that all the family members that came out and talked about Roswell, there's no way that they were all great actors. There's no way. Like, there's no way. So I think that it's important that our generation now digs into Roswell. I think right now we're not thinking about it. There's not enough young people thinking about it, and you know, the people are you know, time is moving, you know what I mean? So we want, if there's still people out there that could be directly connected to the Roswell crash, that like we want to be talking to those people, and we want to be getting questions and putting that at the top of the priority list is like, hey, like what happened in Roswell? Like, we're still not convinced. The government came out later and said that it was Project Mogul, which was like a weather balloon that had like a microphone or something on it to record the Soviet Union. I'm not that familiar with Project Mogul, but that's what they say it was, and even then, so that will just show you firsthand that your government the government is lying. If you know, they're going to say, well, actually, we couldn't tell you at the time, but it was a weather balloon recording the Soviet Union, and I just think that's not good enough. And I think if it is good enough, then, you know, bring Project Mogul down to the UFO museum and display it, so it brings some closure to this whole alien thing. But I believe that what was brought to Wright-Patterson and boxed up and had all these employees all pushed to the side and stuff while this thing was brought in was not Project Mogul. It was something way more secretive, way more important, and it caught everybody off guard. It caught everybody off guard. And I think that even that Roswell Daily Record came out because it was like, whoa, UFO, post it, not like, oh, wait a second, maybe we shouldn't talk about this, right? I believe that it was an honest time. We were proud to be Americans. We won World War II. Everybody was proud. When things happened, it was like accomplishments, and now you have this UFO, whoa, post it. We're the ones, post it. And that's what I thought happened, and I think that once it was posted, it was immediately taken down because there's a bigger thing to the whole thing. It's not just like, oh wow, now there's aliens, good to go. It's like, whoa, no, you know, slow it down. Pull it down. We'll figure it out from there. So guys, again, keep thinking about Roswell, 1947. If you're interested in extraterrestrials, it starts there. There are a lot of encounters that happened before 1947, but it's where it put America on the back pedal, where they had to fight off all these questions, and now the world is thinking about extraterrestrials. It's where it all starts, guys, and it's really important if we want to know what else is out there in this universe. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.